So every weekend, like across the globe right now, there are practitioners taking, these 2-day commercial courses to learn how to fire class 4 medical lasers at your face.
Yeah, literally a weekend course.
Right. And in a lot of jurisdictions, the regulatory framework treats the results of those procedures essentially the same as getting a haircut.
Which is, I mean, it's terrifying when you really think about it.
It is. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at a massive stack of sources. I mean, we've got medical journal reviews on cutaneous laser surgery. We've got aesthetic clinic training guidelines, FDA safety communications, and even this really extensive evidence submitted to the UK Parliament regarding cosmetic procedures.
It's a lot of material to get through for sure.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff. But our mission today is to answer one vital question for you, the listener. Like, when you walk into an aesthetic clinic, what actually dictates your outcome? Is it the, multi-thousand-dollar device sitting in the corner, or is it the training of the person actually holding it?
Okay, let's unpack this because it is literally the defining tension in aesthetic medicine right now.
Totally.
I mean, we've seen this rapid, almost exponential advancement in energy-based devices over the last couple of decades.
Oh, yeah, the tech is crazy now.
Right. But if you look closely at the clinical data, that same technological leap has it cultivated this really dangerous complacency. Like the machinery has evolved, but the industry's understanding of human tissue interaction hasn't necessarily kept pace across the board.
Yeah, because when you actually sit down to unpack this stack of sources, the contrast between the marketing we see and the clinical reality is it's jarring.
Oh, absolutely, night and day.
Like, we are constantly bombarded with social media ads for devices like Morpheus 8 or HIFU or Lutronic lasers, right? And they're branded almost like luxury sports cars.
Yeah, it's all sleek lighting and big promises.
Yeah, exactly. And the underlying promise is that the machine is the magic bullet. But the acquisition aesthetic source highlights a very different dynamic. Clinics often treat purchasing these really expensive devices as like a shortcut to scaling their business.
Right, operating under the assumption that premium hardware just automatically guarantees premium results.
Which, I mean, it reminds me of the music production industry, honestly. Like, you can buy the exact same 72-channel SSL mixing board that they use at Abbey Road Studios, right, with the automated faders and all the digital presets.
I love this analogy, yeah.
But if you don't fundamentally understand frequencies and acoustics and, signal flow, you aren't going to produce a masterpiece. You're just going to produce really expensive, highly polished noise.
That translates perfectly to aesthetic devices. I mean, the clinical guidelines we looked at explicitly warn against that assumption. There is a documented phenomenon in these sources referred to as skill dilution.
Skill dilution? Wait, what does that actually look like in practice?
So when a clinic heavily invests in a highly marketed device, practitioners often begin deferring to the machine's presets.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, rather than relying on their foundational anatomical knowledge. The data actually shows that two separate clinics can operate the exact same model of, say, a fractional CO2 laser, yet deliver vastly different outcomes based entirely on operator competence.
Because the equipment just amplifies the skill of the operator, right? It doesn't substitute for it.
Exactly. I mean, what's fascinating here is the foundational physics of energy-based devices. It relies on something called selective photothermolysis.
Okay, selective photothermolysis. Break that down for us.
Basically, you are utilizing specific wavelengths of light or energy to target a distinct chromophore.
Like a target in the skin.
Right. Whether that's melanin in a hair follicle or hemoglobin in a vascular lesion, or even just water in the dermal layer. The whole objective is to heat and destroy that microscopic target while leaving the tissue just a millimeter away, completely undamaged.
And doing that successfully means the operator has to factor in the thermal relaxation time of the tissue, right?
Precisely.
Like, they need to know exactly how long it takes for that specific target to dissipate the heat before they fire the next pulse.
Which requires a deep understanding of biology, yeah.
But wait, considering we have devices now with like AI-driven presets and real-time sensors and automated cooling, it feels like the machine should be doing the heavy lifting there. Doesn't modern tech essentially autocorrect for human error?
You'd think so, right. But the medical literature addresses those built-in safety mechanisms very specifically. Like, the sources mention advanced systems, the Lutronic Clarity 2's real-time temperature sensing, or the Oligio RF's tissue impedance monitors.
Right, those sound super advanced.
They are incredible engineering feats, but they function as telemetry, they provide data, they do not override clinical judgment.
Ah,
If an impedance monitor flags a spike, but the practitioner fails to recognize, say, physical tissue blanching, or they just ignore the patient's sudden pain response, the machine will still deliver the energy.
So the safety features are essentially just like dashboard warning lights.
That is the perfect way to put it.
They give you the data, but if the pilot fundamentally misunderstands the flight path or ignores the warnings, the plane is still going down.
Exactly. The machine doesn't know it's burning you, it just knows it's doing what it was told.
Which really moves us from the theory of skill right into the physical consequences. Because reading the complication lists in these medical journals, I mean, it is sobering.
Yeah, it's not light reading.
We aren't just talking about a procedure being ineffective. The sources detail severe, sometimes irreversible physical harm directly caused by technique.
Yep. Not the machine, the technique.
Let's look at the mechanics of this, starting with radio frequency devices like Aligio RF, which is used for skin tightening.
Right. So radio frequency relies on converting electrical energy into thermal energy when it contacts the tissue, and that stimulates collagen production.
Which sounds great in theory.
It does, but the epidermis can only tolerate a specific thermal load. It generally caps around 45 degrees Celsius before you risk serious damage. So the application technique is literally everything.
And if they do it wrong?
Well, if the operator doesn't keep the handpiece perfectly perpendicular to the skin, or if they execute like overlapping passes in the same vector without allowing the tissue to cool down.
They cause that cumulative thermal buildup. The heat just essentially gets trapped.
Exactly. It cascades and overwhelms the tissue's ability to dissipate it.
And reading the anatomical breakdowns, it seems the margin for error shrinks drastically depending on the specific zone of the face you're working on.
Oh, absolutely. Areas with minimal subcutaneous fat are incredibly vulnerable.
Like the jawline or the temples.
Yes, the jawline, the temples, the periorbital region around the eyes. If a practitioner uses an aggressive energy setting that was meant for the thicker tissue of the lower cheek, but they use it on the thin skin of the temple,
Oh, no.
yeah, they risk severe fat atrophy. The radiofrequency energy literally coagulates and melts the fat pads that provide structural volume to the face.
Wow. Leaving the patient with a hollowed, prematurely aged appearance, which is literally the exact opposite of what they paid for.
Exactly the opposite. And the mechanics of failure are different, but equally severe when you look at HIFU.
That's high-intensity focused ultrasound.
Right, because HIFU doesn't just heat the surface, it actively bypasses the epidermis to create these precise thermal coagulation points deep in the tissue.
In the SMAS layer, the superficial musculoponeurotic system.
Look at you with the anatomy terms. Yes, the SMAS layer. The depth of that energy delivery is what makes HIFU so effective for lifting, but it's also exactly what makes it so dangerous in untrained hands. Well, if the operator fails to maintain perfect flush contact with the skin, the focal depth shifts. So that intense acoustic energy, instead of targeting the deep SMAS layer, is delivered superficially right into the epidermis.
Resulting in immediate blistering and severe burns, according to the sources.
Yep. And furthermore, the human face contains a highly complex, superficial network of motor and sensory nerves.
Right. The facial nerve anatomy was heavily emphasized in the FDA safety communications. I mean, the marginal mandibular nerve runs right along the jawline, doesn't it?
It does. And an experienced provider maps that out mentally before they even touch the device to the skin.
Right. They know where the danger zones are.
Exactly. They adjust their focal depth and their energy levels to specifically avoid those neural pathways. But an inexperienced operator who is just relying entirely on a machine's preset,
Might fire maximum energy directly over a major nerve branch.
which can lead to prolonged numbness, neuralgia, or even temporary facial paralysis.
Unbelievable. And the nuances get even more complex when we look at the intersection of laser physics and diverse skin tones.
Oh, this is such a critical part of the data.
Yeah, the Springer and Indian Journal reviews in our stack, they dedicate significant time to patients with skin of color, specifically those with Fitzpatrick skin types IV through 6.
Right.
For you listening, if you fall into these categories, the data shows you are highly susceptible to post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, or PIH, if the operator doesn't deeply understand competitive absorption.
That is a critical mechanism to understand. So patients of African, South Asian, or Hispanic descent naturally have a much higher density of melanin in the epidermis.
Right.
When a practitioner uses a laser for, say, hair removal, the target chromophore is the melanin within the deep hair follicle.
The root of the hair.
Exactly. However, the abundant melanin in the surface of the skin acts as a competitive chromophore. It intercepts that light energy before it can even reach the follicle.
So the epidermis basically absorbs the thermal hit that was meant for the hair root.
Yes,
Yes.
leading to severe surface bends and subsequent hyperpigmentation.
But the literature makes it very clear this isn't an inevitable flaw of laser technology itself, right? It's literally an operator failing to select the correct wavelength.
That is the crucial distinction. A shorter wavelength laser, like an Alexandrite 755 nanometer, has very high melanin absorption, but very limited penetration depth.
So using that on Fitzpatrick type V or VI skin is just a recipe for epidermal injury?
100%. A practitioner who is actually well-versed in physics knows they must utilize a longer wavelength, like an NYAG 1064 nanometer laser.
Because the NYAG has lower melanin absorption and penetrates much deeper into the dermis.
Exactly. It safely bypasses that epidermal melanin to target the follicle while relying on aggressive contact cooling to protect the surface.
It requires a real synthesis of physics, anatomy, and device mechanics, which makes the training of the operator the single most critical variable in the entire equation.
Without a doubt.
Yet, when we transition to the UK parliamentary evidence in our stack, the regulatory reality governing these procedures is just stunningly inadequate. Like, here's where it gets really interesting, because the evidence highlights a massive structural
A
mismatch.
huge mismatch. Yeah.
We have medical-grade tissue-altering devices operating primarily within a loosely regulated consumer beauty framework.
It's wild. The parliamentary submissions detail a profound misunderstanding of the clinical risk profile at a regulatory level. I mean, in many regions, there is no mandatory national register for practitioners operating Class 4 medical lasers or administering deep dermal heating devices.
Which goes back to those weekend courses we mentioned at the top of the show.
Right. The data shows that a significant portion of operators receive their primary qualification through short, commercially driven weekend courses.
The idea that someone can learn the intricacies of facial nerve mapping, thermal relaxation times, and complication management over a Saturday and Sunday is just alarming.
It really is, especially because the evidence points out these courses frequently lack supervised clinical hours.
No real-world practice under an expert?
Right. No university accreditation, and crucially, no robust protocols for when things go wrong. I always say anyone can hit a foot pedal when things are going right.
Yeah, that's the easy part.
Mastery is defined by how you manage an adverse event.
And the lack of standardized complication management is exactly what prompted that parliamentary inquiry. When an adverse event occurs, like, say, vascular occlusion from a related injectable, or a deep dermal burn from a laser rapid medical intervention is required.
Immediate intervention. And a practitioner with only a weekend certification often lacks both the diagnostic ability to recognize the complication early and the prescribing power to administer necessary reversal agents or treatments.
Which naturally brings up the big debate dominating these regulatory documents, right? Should these devices be restricted entirely to medical doctors?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because instinctually, that seems like the safest regulatory move. But actually, reading through the British Medical Laser Association, the BMLA paper, it seems the industry pushback against MD-only rules isn't just turf protecting.
No, it's much more nuanced than that. The BMLA provides a highly nuanced analysis of competence versus title.
Right.
A physician who has spent their entire career in general practice or orthopedic surgery has zero foundational training in optical radiation or cutaneous laser tissue interaction.
Yeah, they know bones, not light waves.
Exactly. So handing them a fractional CO2 laser simply because they hold a medical degree does not inherently improve patient safety compared to, say, a specialized aesthetic nurse who has spent a decade mastering those specific energy-based devices.
So the BMLA is advocating for device-specific competence rather than blanket professional titles. They emphasize something called the MHRA-approved Core of Knowledge. What does that actually entail?
So the Core of Knowledge is a standardized curriculum. It focuses on the physics of optical radiation, the specific biological effects on different human tissues, and rigorous hazard management.
Okay, so actual science and safety.
Yes, the BMLA argues that patient safety is best achieved through a tiered system of clinical governance.
Meaning what, practically?
Meaning you have an expert, often a specialized medical director, who establishes clear, evidence-based treatment protocols. It requires a safe operating environment, regular audits, and an absolute mandate that whoever is holding the handpiece has passed standardized, rigorous training on that specific modality.
It shifts the focus from who are you to what exactly do you know how to do and who is overseeing your environment.
Precise.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the entire regulatory landscape is struggling to keep up with the sheer speed of device manufacturing and marketing.
Oh, totally outpacing it.
And nowhere is that more evident than in the FDA safety communications regarding vaginal rejuvenation devices.
Yeah, that is a sobering section of the research.
It is perhaps the ultimate case study in our sources of what happens when device marketing outpaces clinical evidence.
It is a profound example of the risks inherent in a device-centric approach to medicine. Over the last several years, manufacturers aggressively marketed energy-based devices, specifically fractional CO2 lasers and radiofrequency machines, for conditions like genitourinary syndrome of menopause.
Or urinary incontinence and laxity following childbirth.
Right. And the marketing promised this virtually risk-free rejuvenation.
But the FDA, along with the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, had to issue severe warnings because the reality on the ground was vastly different.
Vastly different.
Women were reporting severe adverse events, including deep vaginal burns, extensive scarring, and chronic pain. The core issue highlighted in the sources wasn't necessarily that the machines were defective, though.
No, the machines were doing exactly what they were designed to do.
Right, but they were being promoted for off-label gynecological conditions without robust clinical data supporting those specific applications.
The sources from the Women's Health Clinic break down the pathology mismatch perfectly here. If a patient is experiencing structural pelvic organ prolapse or profound pelvic floor muscle weakness,
Applying a surface laser to the mucosal lining will not correct the anatomical defect.
not at all. The laser interacts with the mucosa, not the deep muscular sling. But if a clinic has heavily invested in an expensive energy-based device and the operator lacks the diagnostic ability to perform a comprehensive gynecological assessment.
The machine becomes a hammer, and every complex pelvic floor issue becomes a nail.
Exactly. It proves that the machine is entirely blind to the pathology. It only delivers the energy it is programmed to deliver.
The safety and efficacy rely 100% on the clinical judgment happening before the device is ever even powered on.
100%.
So knowing all of this, knowing the industry is underregulated, that complications are severe and highly operator-dependent, and that marketing often completely obscures the clinical reality, how do you, the listener, navigate this?
It's tough, but there are things you can look for.
Yeah, how do you look past the glossy brochures and identify a master practitioner?
The sources, particularly the Aesthetic Clinic Training Guidelines from Renovatio Clinic, offer very clear indicators. First, you evaluate their diagnostic approach.
Okay, what does a good diagnostic approach look like?
A highly skilled practitioner does not start the consultation by talking about the machine. They start with a comprehensive anatomical assessment of your tissue, your medical history, and your specific goals.
Right, they look at you, not the equipment list.
Exactly. They differentiate between, say, mild skin laxity, which might respond well to radiofrequency, and true structural sagging, which might require surgical intervention.
That is a massive green flag. A true expert will tell you when the incredibly expensive machine they own is the wrong tool for your biology.
Yes, they are willing to turn away your money to protect your outcome.
I love that. What's the second indicator?
Second is the nuance of informed consent. They won't use terms like risk-free or promise permanent miracles. A master practitioner will actively discuss the specific risks pertinent to your skin type.
Whether that's the risk of hyperpigmentation for skin of color, or the potential for prolonged edema, or the signs of thermal injury.
Right. If they are downplaying the risks, they are selling to you. They're not treating you.
That's such an important distinction. And finally, based on the data regarding thermal relaxation and cumulative heat that we talked about earlier, a skilled operator doesn't aggressively stack treatments to chase instant results.
No, never. They understand the biology of collagen remodeling, which takes weeks to months.
They won't just turn up the fluence to dangerous levels just to provide an immediate, temporary tightening effect that ultimately damages the tissue long term.
Exactly. They respect the biological limits of the tissue more than they respect the maximum power output of the device.
So what does this all mean? When we synthesize the medical physics, the UK parliamentary calls for regulation, and the FDA safety warnings, a singular truth really emerges here.
It does.
In the realm of aesthetic medicine, the device is merely the instrument. The operator is the artist, the scientist, and your ultimate safety net.
That's exactly it.
A state-of-the-art fractional laser or RF machine in untrained hands is not just waste of money, it is a profound clinical liability. But in the hands of a master, someone who deeply understands facial anatomy, competitive absorption, and complication management, it becomes a highly effective tool for safe, transformational results.
You know, this raises an important question. as we look toward the horizon of aesthetic technology.
What's that?
Well, as artificial intelligence becomes increasingly sophisticated, moving beyond simple impedance monitors to systems that can autonomously map vascular networks, instantly analyze dermal hydration, and dynamically adjust pulse durations in real time, will the requirement for deep human operator skill eventually diminish?
Oh, wow.
Or will the human element, the ability to interpret nuanced biology, understand the patient's psychological goals, and provide holistic clinical governance, remain the only barrier separating true healthcare from a highly advanced, laser-equipped vending machine?
An AI-driven vending machine firing class 4 lasers based on an algorithm. I mean, given the rapid technological acceleration detailed in these sources, that scenario might be closer than we think.
It really might.
Which makes regulatory frameworks more urgent than ever.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope this knowledge empowers you to ask the hard technical questions, to evaluate the practitioner's clinical judgment rather than their equipment list, and to demand true anatomical expertise the next time you walk into a clinic.
Because at the end of the day, you need a professional.
Exactly. Because in the complex, high-stakes environment of aesthetic medicine, you don't just want someone who has the budget to buy the instrument. You want someone who actually knows how to play it.